All right, let's get started. Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to this joint Platomics Iona Institute and Twist Bioscience webinar today. It's called Moving Your Lab-Developed Test to IVDR-Compliance with Twist and Platomics. My name is Venkatesh, and I am the Senior Staff Product Manager at Twist, and I will be moderating this webinar today. And so I'd like to introduce our speakers today, and I'll start with Dr. Sebastian Grominger. Sebastian is a molecular biologist and expert in the field of molecular genetics in vitro diagnostics. At Iona Institute, he supports clients in the certification, development, and maintenance of quality management systems, and as well as approval of in vitro diagnostics. Our second speaker today will be Andreas Oberlichtner. He's the head of quality management and regulatory affairs at Platomics. He holds a degree in biomedical engineering and has worked in the field of medical device regulation since 2002. Andreas brings extensive experience in the implementation and maintenance of quality management systems as well as regulatory compliance. Our third speaker today will again be from Platomics, Kevin Gesson. He holds a PhD degree in biochemistry and molecular biology with a focus on genetics. Since 2017, he has worked in the genetic diagnostic industry, developing and implementing NGS workflows. Last year, he joined Platomics as a product manager and recently has moved to a chief operating officer role at the company. We'll cap off our webinar today with a talk from Shakil Ahmed. He's the Senior Director of Regulatory Affairs and Quality Assurance at Twist Bioscience. He has spearheaded various quality and regulatory strategies for small and large organizations, and he has also established quality management systems to support various global international regulatory requirements. And so we have a great lineup of speakers today from all of these three wonderful organizations, and I'll, without any further ado, I will pass the ball over to Sebastian, our first speaker. Sebastian, all yours.
Thank you very much, Venki, for this kind introduction and for inviting me to speak today at this beautiful webinar. So my task today is to set the line, so to say, my talk is about the supplier versus product qualification under the IVDR. But before we can come to that, you see in the background picture, there is an iceberg and a ship heading towards this iceberg. And if you would like to find out what is below the water line, you may wait until the end of this webinar. But before we can come to the real topic of that talk, I may need to demonstrate where the ship is coming from. So let me give you an introduction. First of all, Iona Institute, our mission is to help medical device manufacturers to overcome regulatory challenges and to bring safe products to the market faster. And having this in mind, you may understand why we're here on the Earth. This view is of our location here at the beautiful Lake of Constance and our building where we are located in southern Germany. So a question we are very often asked is, what is an in vitro diagnostic medical device? To make that clear, I need to start with medical devices. Medical devices are products for which the manufacturer states a medical purpose. And IVDs are also medical devices, so a subgroup of the total medical devices, which gain medical information obtained from human specimen. And with that definition in mind, we often get asked, is my laboratory service an IVD medical device? And to answer that question, we first of all need to look into a few definitions. What is a product? That's defined in the ISO 9000. It's the output of an organization. And output is as well defined in there as a result of a process. And a service is defined as an output of an organization as well, which is at least one with at least one activity necessarily performed between the organization and the customer. So we can, so to say, set product equal to service. Laboratory developed tests and in-house devices. We find a definition in the IVD directive. So to say, that the IVD directive says this directive shall not apply to devices manufactured and used only within the same health institution. So the IVD directive, the formal legislation in Europe, did not care about the lab-developed tests. So what are current conflicts for medical laboratories? If you imagine a manufacturer provides a product to the medical laboratory. The manufacturer states, however, it is not intended for use in diagnostic procedures, or even harder formulated, it is for research use only. And then authorities or accreditation bodies say, use CE-IVD products. And then the laboratory states, there are no adequate CE-IVD products available, or modifications and automation is necessary. Having this in mind, we may so to say, look at the situation for when a IVD is used in a medical laboratory. You see that a manufacturer provides, an ISO 13485 compliant manufacturer provides a CE-IVD product to the medical laboratory, and the medical laboratory is putting it into service. And in this situation, the patient comes to the physician and gets consulted, and the sample is taken and sent over to the laboratory. And the laboratory examines these samples and sends back a report. And under the situation where a research use only product is used, the laboratory takes over a few manufacturing and development manufacturing steps, and the situation for the patient and the physician is pretty much the same. So there's no difference for the patient and the physician, that they may not even see the difference. What was the reaction of the EU in that situation? The IVDR. The EU then states in the IVDR regarding service to persons in the EU, it is essential that devices used in the context of a commercial activity to provide a diagnostic or therapeutic service to persons within the Union comply with the requirements of this regulation. So, but they also realized that flexibility is required. So therefore, they state that health institutions should have the possibility of manufacturing, modifying, and using in-house devices, and thereby addressing on a non-industrial scale the specific needs of target patient groups, which cannot be met at the appropriate level of performance by an equivalent device available on the market. And to, so to say, to make a laboratory a health institution, the purpose of the organization should be the care or treatment of patients or the promotion of public health. And if that is stated somewhere for instance, in the quality manual of a medical laboratory, we can set a medical laboratory equal to a health institution. So what are product categories that can be used in a laboratory? There are the research use only products, which have not much regulatory requirements. General laboratory use devices as well do not have a lot of requirements. It really starts with the products for performance studies only. They need to comply with the general safety and performance requirements already before they can be used, for instance, in a performance study. And then we have CE-IVD products with a medical purpose, for instance, to diagnose the disease. They have, so to say, the highest documentation efforts under the IVDR. But laboratories always need to think from A to Z. So if we imagine the full process involving the physician, the transport, the technicians in the laboratory, and the clinical experts interpreting the results, if the results are then transferred back to the patient, we have the full scenario. And what is, so to say, done in the laboratory, they are using several products in combination to achieve a medical purpose. And in this case, laboratories need to fulfill the Annex 1 of the IVDR, so the General Safety and Performance Requirements, which the other speakers will talk about later. And they also need to comply with these points outlined here in that slide. So that they are not allowed to transfer the products. They need to have a proper quality management system. They need to follow the ISO 15189 for quality assurance. They need to compare the competitor devices on the market and must demonstrate that their products are superior to them. They need to provide information to authorities, declare conformity to the general safety and performance requirements. They need to have extensive documentation on manufacturing design and performance, and also need to produce the products according to these specifications, and need to collect experience gained from clinical use, the so to say post-market surveillance activities. And since January 2002, the European Union realized that the timelines are too short for laboratories, including, so to say, the pandemic situation. And they decided that no transfer is allowed. This is kept, so this is already applicable this month. But there are several points which are postponed to May 2024. However, there's one point which is postponed to May 2028, which is the comparison to competitor devices. So we have a bit more transitional periods in this regard. What are now, having this in mind, possible solution for laboratories? I mean, the best solution is to use CE-IVD products where the conformity assessment is performed by the manufacturer, dependent on the class of the device with a notified body. They can also decide to declare the product as in-house device or lab-developed test by demonstrating compliance to the general safety and performance requirements. Or they can continue to use the current situation until May 2028 and then stop the service. These are the three options they have. And who is responsible then under these options? Under CE-IVD, the manufacturer is responsible. Laboratories cannot change the protocols. And an expensive, the products are expensive and the full technical documentation is required. Sorry, I don't see the slide full here, and need to just look up. And they need to report trends and perform the post-market surveillance. And for the in-house devices, I'm very sorry, I don't see everything. Now, I wanted to state that for the CE-IVD products, they have a dependency to the manufacturer. So if they want to change something, they need to ask the manufacturer to change something, for instance, on the instructions for use. In the second situation, in-house devices, the laboratory is responsible. So the manufacturer responsibility, or at least some manufacturer responsibility, is at the laboratory side. Protocol changes are thus possible. The products are cheaper for the laboratories, but they have huge efforts for the documentation. And when they stop the service, the test portfolio is then reduced, but the products are cheaper. But there is still some uncertainty about the surveillance situation until 2028, because we don't know what the authorities will do until then. So they have less efforts or no efforts, but a limited lifespan for those products and services. What are the roles involved in those situations? First of all, we have the users and operators, which is the health institution, for instance, the medical laboratory or hospital. On the second level, we have the manufacturer, who provide instruments or CE-IVD kits. And then we have the supplier of components, which are analyte-specific components like antibodies, master mixes, pre-analytical kits, so on and so forth. And on the fourth level, we have supplier of raw materials who provide buffers, chemicals, enzyme nucleotides, or consumables. Yeah, and let's look at this situation where laboratories take over some responsibility of manufacturers. So the critical activities making a laboratory a manufacturer are if laboratories use proprietary products or processes, if they use non-IVD products in the diagnostic process, for instance, research use only products, if they combine products or processes that are not intended for the combination, or use CE IVD products outside of the intended purpose, which we call off-label use, or if they modify the product, including deviations from the instructions for use of an IVD. So what is the consequence? The laboratories need to apply at least parts of the ISO 13485. If we look into ISO 13485, Chapter 7.4 purchasing, we see what the organization needs to do to evaluate and select the suppliers. And the criteria shall be based on the supplier's ability to provide the products that meets the organization's requirements. So first of all, the organization's requirements need to be specified, which is very often not the case. And it needs to be based on the performance of the supplier. But then you look at C and D, based on the effect of the purchased product. So therefore, you need to estimate what are the risks associated with the product. And yeah, this is outlined in point D, the proportionate to the risk associated with the medical device. So the supplier qualification is based on the ability to provide products and services. For instance, competence, whether they have or use a state-of-the-art technology, their capacity, and the commitment to performing audits on site, and also commitment to corrective and preventive actions. Also a commitment to change control, or so to provide information about changes, traceability to production, and computerized system validation. And they need to report trends and perform post-market surveillance activities, or give input to the post-market surveillance. And on the product side, when they need to have a risk-based approach and need to estimate what is the risk for people, what are regulatory risks, other or no risks, and based on that classification, such that the efforts can be estimated. And also it's different if it is an individual product purchased, if it's a configured standard product, or if it's off-the-shelf product. And the impact, is the impact direct, is it indirect, or does it have no impact? So thereby the efforts can also be estimated. And controlling this can be done by incoming goods inspection, like 100% control, or isn't 100% control necessary? Is such as batch release within the laboratory necessary? Do you need a certificate of analysis, certificate of compliance, or a sampling plan may be appropriate? So what I want to tell you is a quality management system certificate is not sufficient. So the documentation needs to be IVDR compliant. The product must meet the technical requirements, and quality supply agreements are necessary with the suppliers. And on-site audits are recommended. And the qualification of the personnel regarding audits must be available. So all of these must be provided by the laboratories if they take over responsibility for manufacturing. And there's the issue with the research use only product. So technical details are very often not provided. Performance claims are often not appropriate for the clinical use, and the manufacturer is not liable, and audits are sometimes not accepted by research use only providers. So what is the solution? So we can do third-party assessments where the supplier of products, maybe for general laboratory use, like reagent products, instruments, or pre-analytics, can provide their products and their documentation, and we can review the documentation or create such documentation for those suppliers so that the laboratories have less efforts. And we have started a first collaboration with the company MyPulse, also in Germany. And yeah, we call this approach the Diagnosticgrade. And in a phase A, so to say, the products can be assessed by the customer, so by the laboratory, and delivery of the basic documentation takes place by the supplier. And what Jona Institute could add on that is to review that basic documentation and provide you evidence that this is in compliance with IVDR. And in a phase B, a status assessment of the compliance can take place with a gap analysis and supplier audit so that the laboratory exactly knows what to do to reach the compliance for the whole laboratory service. And then phase C is the gap closing, where we can provide verification and validation plans and monitor these activities. And in a phase D, where the laboratories release routine application and conform with LDT with IVDR with their LDTs, we can provide review of changes and post-market surveillance, take over post-market surveillance activities and perform audits if you wish. And with this, you can reach the conformity of in-house devices and lab-developed tests. And with this, I would like to thank you. And if you need help, contact us. And I would like to hand over to Andreas. Please, Andreas, it's yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction and also the invitation to this webinar. And I wish you all a nice afternoon from my side. Within the next couple of minutes, I would now like to take a closer look at the implementation approaches in the labs to bridge the gap, and in the course of this also introduce our latest release, which is the PlatoX GSPR Assistant, a digital tool for supporting in those activities. But first, we have already heard from Sebastian that the IVDR also puts requirements on the health institutions that manufacture in-house devices. But how do the laboratories, for example, see this? What is the level of awareness and their perception here? Well, as you can see, a look at recently published literature shows that the requirements are definitely perceived as critical and very challenging. On the other hand, many requirements in detail are not really new. So in any case, the requirements are now defined via the European regulation, which is the IVDR we have to deal with. So most of us are already familiar with this timeline here. We know that the compliance with the GSPRs will be required as early as May of 2022 for all LDTs used for diagnostic purposes. The GSPRs are the general safety and performance requirements as laid out in Annex 1 of the IVDR. They're literally the heart of the whole regulation, describing the requirements on the IVD devices independently of being a CE or an LDT product. On the other hand, due to the progressive rollout, we know that the usage of LDTs will also be possible until at least 2028, even in those cases where there are already comparable CE products on the market. This requirement will start with 2028. So to highlight once again 4 very important key points about the GSPRs from the point of view of laboratories. First of all, the GSPRs are also to be fulfilled by health institutions with LDTs. We already heard that. Secondly, if we take a closer look at the requirements in the Annex 1, we find that this annex contains 20 main requirements with about 60 sub-requirements. Depending on how you look at it now, these can be broken down into over 190 individual questions, and you need to at least deal with all of these sub-questions during that activity, which means that the effort here is definitely not to be underestimated. Thirdly, the national authorities are obliged to check and monitor compliance with the requirements in the respective member states. So in addition, the accreditation bodies also, in the case of corresponding accreditations, will probably like to have a look at your compliance of your tests. And fourthly, in less than 1 month, it will be the time. So I must also once again repeats here that it affects all LDTs in use, including already established ones. So there is no grandfathering principle for that. Up to now, we already got an idea what the Annex 1 and the GSPRs are all about. The GSPR checklist plays a major role and links the two worlds from left to right. I will now discuss this in the following. So what I would like to do is now to put this in the context of the IVDR with the laboratory environment. And on the one hand, we have on the left side here the regulatory framework with the IVDR and the GSPRs. On the other hand, we have the laboratory here in yellow, which is the health institution with its quality management system, which is ideally already accredited and with different documents and SOPs in place. So first of all, it will be necessary to go through all of the GSPRs in detail and assess which ones have to be fulfilled for your tests. So this is where the GSPR checklist comes into play, which should document exactly that, including the justifications for it. So in addition, we also need to record how we fulfill the respective GSPRs, which are applicable, of course. So the ideal way to do this is, generally speaking, to apply suitable standards, for example, which are also documented in this list. In most cases, a verification document is required, the documents on the right side, that shows exactly that the requirements from the left side, from the respective GSPRs, are actually really fulfilled. So the documents of evidence. So this can be either a verification report, for example, a validation document, a risk management file in the case of the risk management requirements, and so on. So if such evidence is missing in the whole system, we generally speak of a gap in the GSPR evidence. The picture itself, sorry, I need to go through the animation once again. The picture itself also shows that the actual main function of the GSPR checklist here in the middle as blue, it is the linking from the requirements on the left side with the evidence documents on the right side. This is really important to see and to understand. So let's summarize again. Within the framework of our GSPR project, we need a detailed assessment of the applicability of each GSPR firstly. We need then to determine how we fulfill the applicable GSPRs, for example, through appropriate standards, and we also need to document the whole thing. Implicitly, we also see that within this framework, we need to conduct something like a gap analysis and also an action plan to close these gaps. So since such a project cannot be completed in just a couple of minutes, typically an overview in terms of a project management would also not be bad either. In order to be able to support laboratories and manufacturers here in these activities in a very targeted manner, we at Platomics now have decided to build a tool for this purpose, which is the PlatoX GSPR Assistant. So long story short, in the following, I would like to present the GSPR Assistant within a very short live demo. To do this, I will now switch directly to the software and share my screen. So what you should see right now is the starting screen of our GSPR projects tool. I'm already logged in as a user, and what I can see here is a list of my projects, of my GSPR projects. And each of these projects represent one assessment project for one LDT. The tool itself is a software as a service, so typically you log in with your credentials, with username and password, and you should have immediate access to it as soon as you're registered. We have two demo projects here. I will just quickly jump into one of these just to show you how it looks like. First of all, the tool asks you about some information on your project itself. So we need to know some information about the institution itself. This is important because these parts will go into the final report. And secondly, you will find some more additional questions in the form of a questionnaire regarding your product itself. Based on this information, for example, like the intended purpose, you can continue in working on assessing the GSPRs of this specific device. To be supported here, you can see on the right side that we provide some context-specific information into the tabs. On the one hand, we have a extensive explanation on how these questions are meant. We come up with some additional information on the right side. And we see that there is some additional information that should be really helpful to fill out the questions as intended. Furthermore, we have a tab that is showing some definition of terms. This is also context related. That means the information given here, or the definition of terms, is on the one hand really taken out of official specifications and documentation. That should help you to have this always at hand when you need it. And of course, it comes also with the references. Okay. With the next step, then I would like to jump into the GSPR questionnaire itself. It looks like a large tree. As you can imagine, within this tree, you will find all the 192 individual questions I mentioned before. Those are all subparts of the original text of the GSPRs as laid out in the Annex 1. You will find a lot of symbols which indicate the status of each and every of these questionnaires. And now you can just simply dive into the GSPR tree and start with working on each and every one of those. First of all, I will just take one example out of it. For example, GSPR number 3 deals with risk management. The subpoint 3A requires the establishment of a document, of the documentation of a risk management plan. For example, this is required for each and every device. I will just read it out. We need to establish a document and document a risk management plan for each and every device. This is the number 3A. First question here is this one applicable, yes or no? Okay, with this example, we already know that it should be applicable because this is one of the GSPRs which are always applicable for medical or diagnostic tests or devices. But if you're not sure, you can have a quick look onto the right side. The right side gives you a context-related set of guidance questions. For example, for the applicability, is this requirement really applicable for my device? The tool states that if one or more of the following questions are answered with yes, then it is highly likely that the GSPR is applicable. So this one is a rather easy example here. The question is your device used for a medical purpose, example given screening, monitoring, and so on? Of course, this fulfills the definition of the IVD. I will now turn this to yes, and the tool tells me that if one or more of these following questions are answered with yes, it is highly likely. So I will now trust the tool and the answers, and I will select applicability as being yes, it is applicable. We are familiar with GSPRs, and that means that we also need to justify our application or non-application. So that means that we now need to put in some texts in there. I don't know if you can see it. It's in light gray. It gives you some more hints or examples within this window. So I already prepared a small example here. In this example, I would just simply state that this one is applicable, yes, because the device is an in-house manufactured product intended to be used for a medical purpose. This should be sufficient to justify why it is applicable in that context. The next thing I need to think of or consider is which methods do I want to apply to fulfill this applicable requirement right now. That means, once again, reading through it, I need to establish a risk management plan for this device. It's, I would say, rather straightforward. What we need to do, and also to explain a little bit, is that we want to create and release a risk management plan according to the ISO 22367. By the way, this is a standard highly recommended exactly for that purpose. And the following points just explain a little bit the sub-chapters within the relevant point within the standard. This plan would describe exactly the examinations and services. It would reference to some assignments or responsibilities. It would just tell you about the requirements for the reviews of these risk management activities, and of course also regarding the risk control verification and monitoring activities, and so on. So how do I find out about this standard? There's another cool feature built into the platform. We have another tab that is called Standards and Solutions. And if you switch to this one, the tool, again, context related exactly to this GSPR 3A, tells you about some standards which are connected with the fulfillment of this GSPR. That doesn't mean that you need to fulfill each and every of those standards, but it gives you at least a hint where you can start your search. And as we can see, this ISO 22367 is mentioned here with title and a short explanation. And based on this, you maybe find out that this one could be a nice thing to apply to create, to fulfill your GSPR here. So I will then just take this one, because it's also always a good idea to mention the standards which I'm applying here. And last but not least, what I need to fill in, of course, is that I need now the link to the evidence documentation. The tool itself, the GSPR Assistant, cannot provide you up to now with such evidence documentation. You need to have it in your technical documentation or within your quality management system. However, you should put in link right there, whatever that might be. For example, a very short text explaining that you're linking here the document called intended purpose, and of course linking to a document called risk management plan in our short example. Okay, you can also bookmark it, and you can also set the progress of this requirement, just to indicate that you're working on it, also for your colleagues, because you can also collaborate within the platform with other colleagues. And last but not least, we now want to see the report. First of all, what we have is a short overview of gap analysis. I don't want to go too much into detail, but we see in 3A, we have filled out all the necessary fields, so it looks good from this position right here. And last but not least, the final deliverable of the tool itself is, of course, the GSPR checklist that you need to have in hand. It takes some time because it is actually processing directly within the system. Now we have it as a PDF. I will just quickly enlarge it. I hope you can see it. What you have now in your hands is a GSPR checklist that contains some basic information, the information that you put into the tool, of course, and the summaries, but also the whole GSPR checklist that it is required by the competent authorities. As you can see, of course, this table contains exactly the information that we put into the field. Okay, so that's it from the tool presentation. I will now switch back to the slides again. So let me sum up what we learned so far. The actual version of our GSPR Assistant is primarily used to create the required checklist for a specific device under assessment. It enables you to, for digital processing and storage from the assessment to the gap analysis. The process itself is supplemented by a variety of additional information. I think this is really, really helpful during the process of working on the GSPR checklist itself. And for progress analysis, the tool also comes with a very simple but powerful status and report functionality. So in the course of the development of this GSPR Assistant, Platomics has already established a partnership with the Yona Institute. This allows us to provide regulatory content of very high quality. Our goal was to make the tool very quickly available due to the timeline, as you might imagine. But this was just the beginning, so we are already working on the first follow-up version. I will just give you a very small preview on what you can expect among other things. First of all, a German language package for the labs in the DACH area. Secondly, a provision of templates to create such LDT files will come also very soon. We want to improve the workflow and also the user experience in the tool itself, of course, and also tailor it even more towards the health institutions with their LDTs. Also, direct access to expert consulting should be made available together with the Jona Institute in the tool and many more. If you have any further questions after the webinar, just request a live demo. You can use the email address provided here for any more requests. So, as we have learned, the next big milestone in terms of IVDR requirements is May 24 after 22. So the GSPR checklist itself seems to be just the tip of the iceberg, with the whole LDT documentation hidden under the surface. But together with Twist and the Jona Institute, we want to further strengthen the digital support in the medium term in order to provide in-house manufacturers with the best possible support on the lab side. With this, I would like to hand over to my colleague Kevin, who will give you more information on our solution and how to tackle this whole iceberg. Thank you for now for your attention, and of course I'm available for any questions afterwards. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. Thank you, Venki, for the initial introduction, and of course also thank you, Andreas, for this perfect segue. So let's have a look at this tip of the iceberg from quite a bit different perspective. So, as you all have already heard, the requirements of the IVDR in regard of the LDT documentation are being progressively extended over the coming years, with the ultimate goal of harmonizing the regulatory framework and hence the documentation requirements with those of CE-IVD devices placed on the market by actual diagnostic kit manufacturers. So here we are looking at a fishbone diagram of the structure of such an LDT file, which closely resembles the technical documentation of a CE-IVD device. So the first step in this progressive rollout is the compliance to the core piece of the IVDR, as you already heard now multiple times, the general safety and performance requirements, by end of May of this year, which we already cover with our PlatoX GSPR Assistant. Subsequently, full documentation of lab-developed tests is required by end of May 2024, which will be assisted by the successor tool, the PlatoX IVDR Assistant. While this may look like a huge documentation burden on the laboratory and health institution side, and frankly, it is, we won't let you have sleepless nights over this, because you can rest assured that our mission is to take a big chunk of that weight off your shoulders. So, in the next slide, I will show you how we intend to achieve this. So, as a first step in this journey, we launched our free-of-charge tool, the PlatoX GSPR Assistant, in March of this year. It provides labs and health institutions with the possibility, as Andreas just pointed out and showed you live, to assess your current status via gap assessment for fulfillment of individual GSPRs and refers existing verification and validation documentation, ultimately offering the possibility to generate a GSPR report as shown by Andreas. So, the next step will be the establishment of a network of representatives of all relevant players involved in generating a compliant LDT file. A central piece of the diagnostic workflow is the diagnostic kit used in the lab, for which manufacturers will be able to provide a pre-filled GSPR checklist along with SOPs and verification and validation documents directly to the labs and health institutions via our platform. in a format compatible with a seamless integration into your LDT file. Consultants, on the other hand, play a pivotal role in providing templates for processes such as performance evaluation and risk management documentation, and will be able to support you, the labs and health institutions, with consulting and review services. With the two in their respective field renowned players, Twist Bioscience and the Joner Institute, we already created the fundament of an ever-expanding strong network through which we are able to leverage your documentation, throughput, and reduce cost and personal resource requirements on your side. So, summarizing, the PlatoX IVDR Assistant will interconnect laboratories and health institutions with diagnostic kit and reagent manufacturers, as well as high-quality regulatory consultancy support, and thus act as an integrator for all your needs in the space of regulatory compliance of your diagnostic tests, with a strong focus on ever-increasing automation of the document generation process. So, the take-home message for you is that our goal here at Platomics, together with our partners Twist Bioscience and the Joner Institute, is to accompany you on this challenging journey ahead of you and to radically reduce the enormous time and cost involved in order to make you competitive as a laboratory and health institution for the future, and to ultimately, and of course most importantly, ensure state-of-the-art and regulatory compliant patient diagnosis and care in Europe as well as worldwide. So, if we caught your attention, I would like, you would like to use the PlatoX GSPR Assistants free of charge as a lab or health institution, we are of course more than happy to invite you to check out our website and sign up for an onboarding workshop during which you will be registered and ready to use the tool at your own convenience. So, of course, also taking advantage of our services and our support. So just a final remark, if you're also specifically interested in legal aspects which were not directly covered by today's webinar, please visit our website and check out previous webinars where also lawyers with special expertise in all matters IVDR participated. Yeah, so that's that. And with this, I would like to thank you for your kind attention and hand over to Shaquille, who will tell you a bit more about how Twist can assist in getting your exome and custom assays GSPR compliant.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Venki, for organizing this webinar, and Andres, and as well as Sebastian for a great presentation so far, and the audience for taking time out of your busy day to listen to us. So how can Twist assist each of you, those who are already existing customers and those who are prospective customers, to really take the products you purchase from us and make sure that those products are GSPR compliant? So as Kevin had mentioned earlier, that partnership, right? When you work with Twist, who has partnered up with Joner Institute as well as Platomics, you're going to get a complete solution. From the expertise of the regulatory compliance that we leverage off of Joner Institute and the digital applications that Platomics can provide. So we are committed, that is Twist, as well as our partners such as Platomics and Joner Institute, to really help customers navigate through the regulatory challenges. Indeed, there are a lot of challenges, but you're not alone. You have someone to leverage off to help you guide through this, and as part of this commitment, we will help you. So we're not just going to sell the product to you and then walk away. And we will ensure that it doesn't interrupt your day-to-day activities there. So GSPR in a nutshell, so devices shall achieve the performance intended by their manufacturers and shall be designed and manufactured in such a way that during normal conditions of use, they are suitable for their intended purpose. Very key thing. All auditors are going to look at that statement and ask you to justify that your product is suitable for the intended purpose. And as Andres had mentioned, there's about 20 main clauses in the GSPR. So there's 3 chapters in Annex 1, the general requirements, your 8 clauses. The Chapter 2, really the requirements regarding performance, design, and manufacturing. This is where you would want to leverage off of Twist and say, hey, look, we purchased this assay. We need to know what you guys have as far as performance characteristics to ensure performance compliance. And then there's Chapter 3, which really you guys are going to have to focus more around the labeling aspect of it. So Twist has a QMS. It is ISO 13485 certified. As Sebastian had mentioned earlier, that, what does that mean? That means we are committed to you auditing us. We are committed to ensuring that we have a robust CAPA process, change management, all the things that your certified body or notified body is going to ask you about. Who is your supplier and how well are they supporting you? And really around the RUO custom assay and exome performance characteristics. So we want to be able to provide you information you would need to complete your technical documentation. And this will in return ensure performance compliance. And things may pop up during that discussion. Where's your stability data? Where's your shipping conditions? Where are your certificate of analysis, your certificate of conformity? Where are your chemical, physical, and biological properties? Again, this is just a tip of the iceberg. You may have a lot more questions than this. And that's where we will not shy away from supporting you, especially now that we've partnered up with Platomics and Yonder Institute. So thank you for your attention. We really appreciate you attending this webinar. If you need to reach out to Twist about any of our products or any specific questions around IVDR, there's customer support at twistbioscience.com. And that will conclude my section of the webinar. I'll turn it over to Venki.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening in for the webinar today. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank all the presenters today. We are now going to open it up for questions. And again, if you have a question, please make sure to ask it in the Ask Question box. I already see a few of you posting your questions, so we'll go through these one by one. And I'll read the question and I'll point it to our speakers to see if they can pick these. So the first question I see here is coming in from, and so what this question asks is, do the 2022, 2024, and 2028 EU regulatory timelines apply to the UK post-Brexit? I'll pass this to Sebastian. Sebastian, can you take this question?
Sure, I can take this question. In the UK, it's a bit difficult. After the Brexit, the UK just made a step back to the directives. So, but take care, this doesn't apply to Northern Ireland. This only applies to the rest of the UK. The EU directives are then still applicable, as long as the MHRA doesn't change that.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll go on to the next question. The next question is, does the Platomics solution qualify also bioinformatics analysis pipelines? Andres or Kevin?
Maybe Kevin, this is something for you.
Maybe I'm taking this question. Hi, Andreas. This is a question that cannot be answered as straightforward as you might imagine. What we can do currently with the PlatoX GSPR Assistant is to include your own verification and validation documentation. But your specific question is actually a thing that we would have to look into in a case-by-case manner. And I mean, yeah, we know each other, so maybe you can directly reach out, and then if you agree, this is also information that we could make available on broader terms for other people in the audience, for example, and also make available within the GSPR Assistant or on our website.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll go to the next question. The next question is, can Twist assist with risk management specific to the RUO products being provided? Shakil?
Absolutely. So when you guys perform your internal risk assessment on the final finished product, then you would leverage off of our risk management file as well. And then basically do a handshake with yours.
Perfect. I think we got time for maybe a couple more questions. I think I see one more question, and this is for Andreas. Do I need to validate the tool, the PlatoX tool?
Well, this depends more on your quality management system requirements, I would say. So typically, of course, in a regulated environment, you need to perform a CSV, as we have also seen in the talk of Sebastian, the computerized systems validation to qualify your environment and also the digital tools in there. Like with the FDA, we have the Part 11, for example, requirements, and this is also true for an ISO 13485 environment where you need to validate your tools. And exactly to tackle this, we are also planning to provide a validation material for the software package itself quite soon. The good thing is it is a software as a service, so it is running already on a system that is 2700001 compliant, so under management for IT. And also the development of the tool itself happened under ISO 13485 and IEC 62301. So we fulfill everything that is required for this tool from our side.
Perfect. Thank you, Andreas. And we've got a last question here. For reagents, what documents can Twist share with customers? Shakil, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So documents specific to supporting the performance characteristics. So as I had mentioned, things like the C of A, the biocompatibility of any of our reagents with your finished product, as well as scoping out any other performance characteristics that you may need for your technical documentation.
Perfect. I think that will be all for today. Again, I want to thank everyone. And in the interim, if we can help you in any way, please feel free to reach out to customer support at twistbioscience.com. With that, I'll thank everyone again and wish you a great day ahead. Thank you.